If I'm an ordinary voter and I've gone out and voted Brexit because I believe, yes, we should run our own country, but absolutely particularly we should control our own borders and reduce the levels of immigration into Britain, I have to look at the figure suggesting net migration could be running as much as 1 million a year and say that it's been a failure. Now, that's not a failure because Brexit itself is a failure. It's a failure because of the way this government has failed to implement it. So the failure of Brexit is to be laid fairly and squarely at the door of the Conservative government. They have chosen not to use the powers that we have with Brexit. They've chosen, actually, to turn us into more of a mass immigration country than we've ever been before. And that's why in the Red Wall in particular, where millions of people came out and voted who normally wouldn't vote in something like a referendum or even often in general elections, their one big reason for doing it was to take back control of the borders. We haven't done it. I think we focus too much, maybe it's my fault, we focus too much on the boats crossing the English Channel. Whilst it's an outrage and an affront, especially to those who've come here legally, that 50 or 60,000 or whatever it's going to be this year is peanuts compared to the figures for legal net migration. We're told running up to the next general election, this could go beyond 1 million people a year. That would be 3 times the highest ever year we experienced before Brexit. Why is it happening? Well, because the Australian-style point system that Boris Johnson promised the country actually lowered the bar at which you could enter the country. We have no upper cap, we have no limit, and so, if you're unable to get a GP appointment, or your kids can't get onto the housing ladder, or it takes you twice as long to get to work because of the traffic on the roads, don't be surprised. We have a population crisis in this country. It's the biggest thing affecting people's lives every single day. Our living standards are declining because of mass immigration, and this government clearly has no interest in doing anything about it. We've become the low productivity, we've become the low wage capital of Europe over the course of the last 20 years, and it's pretty clear big employers want to continue on that course. But think about it. Over 5 million people of working age in Britain who are not working. We cannot endlessly go on massively increasing the size of our population, diminishing the ability of ordinary folk to get services that they used to think were a right. We can't go on like this. The ability to make your own decisions must be the right thing to do. I didn't foresee that a British government with those powers would put us up to 1 million a year net migration. I didn't foresee a British government with those powers would put corporation tax up by 30%, would be driving people away. I didn't foresee a brain drain like the 1970s of young talented people leaving for Portugal, for Australia. I think what we've seen so far with Brexit is that our politicians are about as useless as the European Commission was before. But we still do, at least now, through the ballot box, have a chance at some point in the future to change that. So am I disappointed by Brexit? Immensely, along with millions of people. But my real disappointment isn't the Brexit process, it's this Conservative government. I made one promise in that referendum campaign in the previous 20 years. My promise was we would be back in control and the masters of our own destiny. And that's all I ever promised. Yes, the career politicians like Boris Johnson promised money for the NHS and all the rest of it. What I promised was the ability to control our borders and to govern our own country. That we have, but sadly, the Conservatives have blown it, and the expectations of Brexit voters have not been met. And that has led to mass disenchantment with the Brexit process for millions of people. There's nobody more disappointed in that than me.